Cracks spread rapidly across the scales, the once bright azure light dimmed, and tiny fragments continuously flaked off, only to be crushed into powder by the terrifying pressure surrounding them. Lin Dong looked at the rapidly shattering armor on his body, his face showing some seriousness but no hint of panic. The surrounding pressure, though fearsome, hadn't reached the point where he had no escape. Let's see just how terrifying this pressure can get. Lin Dong grinned. With a sudden jolt, the armor shattered completely, crumbling into dust and dispersing into the air. Boom! As the armor disintegrated, the overwhelming pressure instantly poured onto Lin Dong's body, carving harsh red marks across his skin. Buzz! Just as the pressure seemed ready to crush him, a strange black light began to seep out of Lin Dong's body, eventually forming a black membrane that enveloped him entirely. The membrane had countless small, slowly rotating black holes, releasing an intense power of devouring. It voraciously consumed the dense nirvana golden chi in the surroundings, as well as the invisible pressure. Clearly, even the immense pressure at the bottom of the Pill River was no match for the domineering power of devouring, which could consume anything in its path. The vigorous nirvana golden chi, along with the pressure, continuously surged into Lin Dong's body. Under this aggressive devouring, the surrounding golden light slowly began to shrink, while the aura emanating from Lin Dong grew increasingly powerful. After resolving the internal chaos in his body, Lin Dong was no longer troubled by the external pressure. At this rate, it was clear he would soon devour all of the nirvana golden chi in this area. The overwhelming might of the devouring ancestral talisman was once again on full display. Time flowed quickly at the bottom of the dark Pill River, and the golden light grew dimmer and dimmer. Meanwhile, the temperature around Lin Dong gradually rose, causing the cold river water to bubble and churn. As the water roiled, the primordial energy rippling from Lin Dong's body became increasingly violent, sending wave after wave across the river, only dissipating when they reached the distant surroundings. It was clear that Lin Dong's internal energy was in a state of extreme instability, a sure sign that the nirvana tribulation was approaching. Thanks to the immense power of the Pill River pouring into him, Lin Dong's strength had finally advanced once more, preparing him to challenge the fifth nirvana tribulation. His figure remained still, seated quietly at the bottom of the Pill River. Violent primordial energy erupted from his body, forcefully scattering the surrounding pressure. A small safe zone began to form within a few feet around him. It's finally here. As Lin Dong's skin flushed red, his eyes slowly opened, a flash of relief and excitement flickering within them. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. For many nirvana practitioners, the fifth nirvana tribulation was no easy feat, but with Lin Dong's incredibly resilient body, strengthened both externally and internally by the sky-transforming dragon art, there was little for him to fear. The threat posed by this internally driven nirvana tribulation was far less daunting than he had anticipated. If it's here, then let me see just how powerful this fifth nirvana tribulation truly is. Lin Dong smirked, forming seals with his hands before closing his eyes once more. Instantly, a surge of searing heat exploded from his body, accompanied by the roaring sound of rushing water as it spread madly in all directions. Boom, boom. The violent primordial energy burst out of Lin Dong's body, causing the surrounding river water to tremble violently. Yet his body remained utterly unmoved, as steady as an ancient tree rooted in the ground. Clearly, Lin Dong's fifth nirvana tribulation had officially begun. While the bottom of the Pill River was in upheaval due to Lin Dong's tribulation, the surface remained calm, with only occasional ripples stirring the golden nirvana chi above. The platforms surrounding the Pill River were crowded with figures. Lin Dong had been at the bottom of the river for 11 days now, and this news had spread throughout the Dao sect within a matter of days, causing quite a stir. Every year, a few outstanding disciples of the sect would undergo the Pill River baptism, but the longest anyone had ever lasted within the river was 8 days. These disciples were all elite members of the younger generation within the sect, but this time, someone had survived at the bottom of the river for 11 days. This achievement far surpassed anyone in the current generation, even outshining the best among the Dao sect's younger disciples, including the exceptional EngSubs. And to everyone's astonishment, the person responsible for this extraordinary feat was a new disciple who had only recently joined the Dao sect. This news caused a commotion across all 4 halls of the sect. Many disciples flocked to witness the phenomenon, making the Wild Hall especially lively in recent days. On one of the platforms closest to the Pill River, a group of people stood, their eyes filled with awe as they gazed at 4 distinct circles formed on the platform. Standing at the head of each circle were 4 figures, exuding an imposing presence. Their eyes, filled with respect and awe, darted between the 4 figures, for these were the most exceptional personal disciples of the Wild Hall this generation had to offer. On the far right stood a particularly burly man. Clad in gray, his face was tight and solemn, without a trace of a smile. His thick arms were unusually long, resembling the limbs of an ape, radiating an overwhelming sense of power. This was none other than Pang Tong, the senior disciple of the Wild Hall. Next to him, in stark contrast, was a much smaller man with bright, piercing eyes that occasionally flashed with a sharp glint. Despite the presence of several tall Wild Hall disciples behind him, his aura far surpassed theirs. He was Song Zhou, the second senior disciple of the Wild Hall. Further to the right was a man dressed in dark red, his expression icy. With his arms crossed, he stared coldly at the distant Pill River, a hint of malice in his eyes. Beside him stood Tong Chuan, his face somewhat awkward as he looked at the figure in front of him, seemingly wanting to speak but hesitating. Pathetic. You even let the Pill River baptism slip through your fingers and got beaten by a mere newcomer. What a disgrace. The man in red glanced at him, rebuking him coldly. Brother Zhang Hao, Lin Dong's skills are nothing to scoff at. He's far beyond ordinary disciples. Losing to him wasn't unfair. Please don't be angry. Tong Chuan forced a bitter smile. I know what I'm doing. I don't need you to tell me, Zhang Hao snorted. Maybe he is indeed strong, but no one can bully my people that easily. I'm curious to see just how arrogant this newcomer can be, showing no respect to his senior brothers. Zhang Hao spoke with a faint sneer. Hearing this, Tong Chuan could only shake his head bitterly. Zhang Hao's protective nature was well known in the Wild Hall. But Lin Dong had stirred up quite the storm, and now even the direct disciples like them were running out of patience. Heh, Brother Jiang, this newcomer is no ordinary person. He's lasted 11 days at the bottom of the Pill River. Even you and I would struggle to do that now. If you confront him, just be careful not to hit a wall. On the far left stood a young man dressed in white, the youngest of the 4. His features were handsome, and though his age was the youngest, the powerful aura emanating from him was not much weaker than the others. He was Fang Yun, the 4th senior disciple of the Wild Hall, the youngest of the direct disciples, but one with immense talent. In just 2 years, he had reached the same level as veterans like Pang Tong. Whether he's capable or not, we'll only know after we try. It's not something we can settle with just words. Zhang Hao glanced at Fang Yun and said, I didn't expect even you, who were in seclusion, to be drawn out by this. It seems you're paying quite a bit of attention to Lin Dong. Anyone who can last 11 days during the Pill River baptism deserves attention. Haha, perhaps we'll have another contender for the Great Wilderness Scripture this year. Fang Yun smiled, then turned his gaze toward the still Pill River and murmured, even Elder Zhou Tong back then only lasted 12 days? Zhang Hao's eyes narrowed slightly, and he fell silent, but his gaze grew more serious. As the area around the Pill River buzzed with excitement, a sharp sound of wind suddenly came from a distant mountain peak. 2 graceful figures descended and landed atop a giant tree, overlooking the Pill River from above. The 2 women were none other than the senior sister of the Heavenly Hall, EngSubs and Huan. That guy still hasn't come out? Huan bit her red lips as her bright eyes fixated on the Pill River. Could that guy really match Elder Zhou Tong's record? How is that even possible? What kind of world is this where that guy could compare to Elder Zhou Tong? If he doesn't come out today, that would be ideal. At most, his achievement would match Elder Zhou Tong. EngXiao's delicate hand gripped her green sword as she spoke softly. Huan was stunned for a moment before understanding her sister's meaning. Clearly, Lin Dong's goal was the same as Elder Zhou Tong's, to completely absorb the Nirvana golden chi from the bottom of the Pill River. If Lin Dong emerged now, it would mean he had accomplished it in just 11 days, whereas Elder Zhou Tong had needed 12. This would mean Lin Dong's accomplishment would surpass that of the revered figure, seen as a god among the disciples of the Wild Hall. Just thinking of this, Huan couldn't help but bite her lip. It was hard to imagine that the person she had always scolded for being arrogant could surpass the idol she held in such high regard. Then he better stay hidden a while longer. Huan muttered under her breath, her eyes shifting mischievously. EngXiao cast her a helpless glance, but just as she was about to speak, her expression suddenly changed, and she quickly turned toward the Pill River. There, the previously calm surface of the river began to bubble, with surging waves of primordial energy erupting violently. Things won't go the way you imagined? Watching the suddenly turbulent Pill River, EngXiao took a deep breath, letting the cool air seep into her heart as she whispered softly. Above the Pill River, the water suddenly boiled as massive waves rose up, crashing onto the surrounding platforms with a thunderous roar. The sudden changes in the Pill River instantly drew countless gazes from all around. Eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion, everyone wondered if Lin Dong was finally emerging. At this thought, many stretched their necks, eager to see if this newcomer, Lin Dong, had spent the last 11 days simply idling away his time at the bottom of the river, or if he had truly absorbed all of the Nirvana golden chi from the depths. The black vortex that led directly to the bottom of the river began to show signs of fracturing, as waves of incredibly violent energy surged up from its depths. This energy, it's the Nirvana tribulation. Hovering above the Pill River, Chunzhan and Wu Dao exchanged startled glances. With their abilities, they could immediately sense the distinct aura that signaled the arrival of the Nirvana tribulation. This kid, it seems he really did absorb all the Nirvana golden chi from the bottom of the river, Chunzhan remarked gravely. And in just 11 days. Wu Dao gently stroked his beard, his expression tinged with complexity. Elder Zhou Tong was revered not only by the disciples of the Dao sect, but also by hall masters like themselves, who admired him deeply. Yet now, a disciple of their own Wild Hall had managed to surpass even Zhou Tong's record in the Pill River baptism. Though we don't know what method he used, the fact that he managed to absorb all the Nirvana golden chi speaks volumes about his capability. Your judgment was spot on this time. It seems Wild Hall is ready to awaken from its long dormancy. Chunzhan allowed himself a faint smile, his voice filled with warmth. After all, Wild Hall had remained silent for many years. Don't put too much stock in this kid just yet. It's only a Pill River baptism, which doesn't prove much. If Wild Hall is to truly rise again, it will depend on whether he can fully comprehend the great wilderness scripture. Otherwise, when the hall competition comes around, he still won't be able to match the top disciples from the other 3 halls who have mastered the 3 great scriptures, Wu Dao said thoughtfully. Though he had high hopes for Lin Dong, he didn't want to burden the young man too much. Lin Dong had great resilience, but he was still very young. I know what you mean, Chunzhan said after a moment of silence. But with the commotion he's caused, it's not just us. Some of the elders are surely paying attention now, and the disciples from the other 3 halls will be watching him closely. If he fails to grasp the great wilderness scripture, the backlash could be severe. There's bound to be gossip, given how astonishing his performance in the Pill River baptism has been. Let's wait and see. There are still nearly 3 months left until Wild Hall's annual competition. Right now, only Pang Tong and the other 3 have the right to study the great wilderness scripture. If Lin Dong wants that privilege, he'll have to surpass those 4, and they won't make it easy for him. They're not pushovers, and they'll do everything to maintain their senior status. Wu Dao could only smile bitterly. After today, Lin Dong's name would be known to the disciples of all 4 halls. For years, the only disciple to achieve such a feat had been Elder Zhou Tong, revered like a deity by many. Now, Lin Dong would inevitably be compared to him. This would cast a large shadow over Lin Dong, and if he couldn't surpass it, it might hinder his cultivation path. This pressure, emanating from such a legendary figure, would be like a mountain blocking Lin Dong's way. If he couldn't overcome it, it could become a massive blow to his progress. Whether this was a good or bad thing for Lin Dong, Wu Dao wasn't sure. He knew Lin Dong had extraordinary potential, but the person he was destined to surpass was a prodigy who had once shaken the entire Eastern Mystery region. As Wu Dao and Chen Zhen conversed, the disturbances above the Pill River grew increasingly intense. Waves of violent nirvana chi surged relentlessly from the vortex, and eventually, even the disciples on the surrounding platforms could feel it. Given their experience, everyone present quickly recognized the signs of a nirvana tribulation. The crowd was astonished. Had Lin Dong really absorbed all the nirvana golden chi and was now undergoing the nirvana tribulation? On one of the platforms, the 4 direct disciples of Wild Hall, including Peng Tong and Jiang Hao, watched in surprise. Jiang Hao, in particular, furrowed his brow and then smirked. He's got some skill, but even if he passes this nirvana tribulation, he'll still only be at the 5th nirvana stage. As one of Wild Hall's top disciples, Jiang Hao had already reached the 7th nirvana stage and possessed numerous powerful martial arts, making him incredibly formidable. While Lin Dong had beaten Tong Chuan, that hardly made Jiang Hao feel threatened. After all, the title of the 4 direct disciples of Wild Hall wasn't earned lightly. Boom! Suddenly, a pillar of light, formed from concentrated nirvana chi, shot up from the river with an explosive sound. Bang! 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 Following that first pillar of light, it seemed a chain reaction had been triggered, as numerous other pillars burst forth in quick succession. Violent waves of nirvana chi spread rapidly, carrying a familiar searing heat that told the crowd Lin Dong was indeed undergoing the nirvana tribulation at the bottom of the Pill River. Let's see if that kid can make it through the nirvana tribulation. If he fails, it'll be quite the spectacle. All eyes were now fixed on the river. The nirvana tribulation was something even the most experienced cultivators feared, and no one dared to underestimate it. Whether Lin Dong could pass it remained to be seen. As the lake continued to tremble, the vortex on its surface gradually shrank, until only a narrow passage, about a meter wide, remained. He's coming out. From a distant peak, Ing Xiaoxiao's beautiful eyes narrowed, while Ing Huanhuan quickly strained her neck, staring unblinkingly at the Pill River. Swoosh! Just as Ing Xiaoxiao finished speaking, a dazzling beam of golden light suddenly shot out from the shrinking vortex, soaring straight into the sky. Boom! As the golden light erupted from the river, a powerful wave of energy instantly swept out from it. All eyes instantly focused on that beam of golden light. Within the radiance, a figure seemed to let out a long, clear roar, filled with powerful nirvana chi that echoed across the surroundings. Under the gaze of countless spectators, the golden light gradually dissipated, revealing a slender young man standing in full view of everyone. Golden light still lingered around his body, giving him an extraordinary appearance from afar. Many people could feel an oppressive aura emanating from the light. That's spirit chi. Peng Tong and the others narrowed their eyes. After reaching the 7th nirvana stage, their primordial energy had begun to generate spirit chi, so they were very familiar with this aura. However, what unsettled them was that the spirit chi surging around Lin Dong's body seemed even stronger than their own. He absorbed all the nirvana golden chi. On the distant mountain peak, Ing Xiaoxiao's slender jade hand tightened slightly as she spoke quietly. There was no longer any doubt. With Lin Dong only at the 5th nirvana stage, it would have been impossible for him to generate spirit chi on his own. The only explanation was that he had completely absorbed all the nirvana golden chi from the bottom of the Pill River. Ing Huanhuan bit her red lips, her delicate face showing a complicated expression. She had initially been indifferent toward this newcomer, and had even labeled him as arrogant and boastful. Yet, in less than half a month, this very person had caused a sensation throughout the entire Dao sect. What's so special about it? It's just a Pill River baptism. Let's see if he can comprehend the great wilderness scripture. Ing Huanhuan muttered, though her tone was clearly lacking in confidence. The disdain she had once held for Lin Dong had completely dissipated. She had undergone the Pill River baptism herself, and knew just how difficult it was to achieve what Lin Dong had. Let's go. No need to watch any further. Wild Hall has a promising new disciple, but this alone won't be enough to comprehend the great wilderness scripture. I hope he can succeed when the time comes. I too want to witness just how powerful the strongest of the Tao sect's 4 great scriptures truly is, EngSubs said as she gracefully turned and flew away without hesitation. After a brief moment of hesitation, EngHuan followed closely behind. As the 2 sisters departed, Lin Dong, who was hovering above the Pill River, seemed to sense something. He turned his head slightly in their direction, squinting his eyes. It seemed he had attracted quite a bit of attention this time. But that was fine. The days ahead were bound to be even more exciting. The great wilderness scripture. He was determined to comprehend it. In the sky, the golden light surrounding Lin Dong gradually faded, and the sharp, oppressive aura quietly dispersed. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he descended onto one of the platforms. As he landed, Mo Ling and his group, who had been waiting for a while, immediately approached him, their faces filled with joy. Congratulations, Brother Lin Dong, on successfully overcoming the tribulation. Hearing their congratulations, Lin Dong smiled, but when he scanned the group, he paused. He didn't see Little Mink or Little Yin. Where's Little Mink? Brother Lin left the Tao sect with Little Yin 3 days ago. Before he left, he asked me to give you this, Mo Ling said with a shrug. They were well aware of Little Mink's mysterious and unfathomable nature, so they weren't too surprised by his unusual actions. As he spoke, Mo Ling held out his hand, revealing a drifting golden light. From within the golden light, Lin Dong could sense a trace of Little Mink's demon spirit aura. They left. Lin Dong sighed softly, pursing his lips as he accepted the golden light from Mo Ling. As soon as it touched his hand, the light flowed into his body, and a vague figure appeared in his mind. It was Little Mink. Lin Dong, I've taken Little Yin and left for now. There's a place in the Eastern Mystery region that's very beneficial for his cultivation. You should be safe here in the Tao sect, so I feel comfortable leaving. Once Little Yin finishes his training, I'll bring him back. In the meantime, I'll work on recovering some of my strength. There's still much to be done in the future. Little Mink's handsome face darkened slightly, and his voice carried a hint of cold, killing intent. Lin Dong remained silent. He understood that there was a past full of unresolved matters. Little Mink had once been the previous owner of the mysterious stone Talisman, but had been forced into such dire circumstances. If he hadn't met Lin Dong later, he likely would have faded away within the Talisman, his end a tragic one. I know your temperament. If something happens to me, you'd probably risk your life to help. But I need to tell you this. If you want to help me in the future, you'll need to strengthen yourself first. Otherwise, I'll handle things on my own. Since we're brothers, I won't let you throw your life away in vain. The ones who managed to push me into that situation when I was at my peak are no ordinary opponents. I've left a demon spirit imprint within your body. If there's an emergency, I'll contact you directly. If you find yourself in trouble, just shatter the imprint, and I'll know. If anyone in the Tao sect dares to bully you, Lord Mink will step in. No one gets to mess with my brother. And one more thing. Even though that dumb tiger Little Yin always sides with you, if you want to be the big brother, you'll have to prove yourself. Otherwise, I won't agree. So use this time wisely and work hard on your cultivation. As the voice faded, Little Mink's image gradually dissipated, eventually transforming into a stream of golden light that settled within Lin Dong's body. This guy. Lin Dong's lips twitched into a slight smile, then his hand clenched into a fist within his sleeve. He raised his head and took a deep breath. Don't worry. Even though you'd never admit it, I know you'll eventually call me Big Brother willingly. No matter what, I will surpass you. And in the future, the 3 of us brothers will make a name for ourselves in this world. Back then, when they first left the small town of Qingyang, Lin Dong was just a weak boy, and Little Mink was a demon spirit on the verge of dissipating. In many ways, they had been inseparable, relying on each other as they made their way step by step to where they were today. The bond they shared was something few could truly understand. Lin Dong slowly calmed the waves in his heart. After all, this wasn't a true parting of life and death. Moreover, With his current strength, he had the ability to protect himself. As for Little Mink and Little Yin, there was no need for him to worry. Little Mink now possessed the powerful body of the heavenly demon Mink, making him strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with a life mystique stage expert. In the Eastern Mystery region, his strength was enough to be considered formidable. As long as no unexpected disasters occurred, they would be safe. For now, Lin Dong's sole focus was to successfully comprehend the great wilderness scripture. With his thoughts collected, Lin Dong raised his head and smiled at Mo Ling and the others. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly felt an oppressive gaze fix on him. His eyebrows lifted slightly as he turned toward the source of that gaze. His eyes met those of a man dressed in dark red, with his arms crossed and an indifferent expression. Though the man said nothing, a powerful aura radiated from him, filling the space with pressure. Standing behind the man, Lin Dong saw Tong Chuan, looking a bit embarrassed. Lin Dong's eyes flickered as he began to piece things together. "You've caused quite the stir this time," Mo Ling whispered beside him, a hint of concern in his voice. "Even the 4 direct disciples in closed-door cultivation have been drawn out. That man is Jiang Hao, one of the most famous disciples of Wild Hall, and fiercely protective of his own. Tong Chuan is part of his faction, so be careful." Lin Dong gave a slight nod, understanding well that even within Wild Hall, factions existed. The most prominent factions, of course, were led by the 4 direct disciples. By taking Tong Chuan's place in the Pill River baptism, Lin Dong had made a legitimate move, but it was inevitable that some would harbor resentment. Competition existed everywhere. As these thoughts crossed Lin Dong's mind, he cast his gaze toward the other 3 directions. There, he saw the other 3 direct disciples. The pressure they exuded was no less than Jiang Hao's. Based on his observations, it seemed all 4 had reached the 7th nirvana stage. As expected of Wild Hall's top disciples, Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a tinge of admiration. Although Wild Hall was the weakest of the 4 halls, it still held deep foundations that could not be underestimated. Still, while these 4 direct disciples were undoubtedly powerful, Lin Dong wasn't someone who could be pushed around either. If it came to a fight, he wouldn't back down. Whoosh! A rush of wind sounded from above as the figures of Chen Zhan and Wu Dao appeared on the platform. Seeing the 2 hall masters, the Wild Hall disciples immediately bowed in greeting, even the proud direct disciples reigning in their arrogance. The disciples of Wild Hall clearly held these 2 hall masters in great respect. "Heh, Lin Dong, well done," Qinjin said, waving his hand toward the disciples before turning his gaze to Lin Dong, his aged face filled with a satisfied smile. It was clear he was extremely pleased with Lin Dong's performance in the Pill River baptism. "Hall Master, you flatter me." "I was just lucky," Lin Dong replied, quickly humbling himself. Chun Zhun smiled warmly at Lin Dong, his fondness evident. After a moment of thought, he spoke again. "With your current achievements, even though your experience is still shallow, you are qualified to be promoted to a direct disciple." Buzz. Chun Zhun's words caused a ripple of murmurs to spread through the platform. Countless envious gazes turned toward Lin Dong. In Wild Hall, there were 4 levels of disciples: registered disciples, Wild Hall disciples, direct disciples, and above them, direct senior disciples. Wild Hall had over 10,000 registered disciples, 3,000 official disciples, 300 direct disciples, and only 4 direct senior disciples. This demonstrated just how prestigious the rank of direct senior disciple was. More importantly, only direct senior disciples were eligible to study the great wilderness scripture. Many disciples in Wild Hall spent years in grueling training, hoping to earn this title. Yet here was Lin Dong, having been in Wild Hall for less than half a month, already being promoted directly to the rank of direct senior disciple. It was no wonder many disciples were green with envy. Despite their envy, everyone knew that based on Lin Dong's abilities, he indeed deserved this honor. Lin Dong was momentarily stunned by Chen Zhan's words, but soon a wave of joy surged in his heart. This meant he was one step closer to the great wilderness scripture. "Thank you, Hall Master." Lin Dong stepped forward and bowed in gratitude. However, just as he spoke, a cold voice suddenly rang out from behind. "Wait, Shua." All eyes turned toward the voice, landing on Jiang Hao, dressed in red, his arms still crossed, staring coldly at Lin Dong. A chilling wave of primordial energy slowly spread from his body. The platform fell silent as the sudden interruption caused the atmosphere to become tense. Many disciples exchanged glances before falling quiet. They all knew Jiang Hao's temperament. Even without Lin Dong taking Tong Chuan's spot in the Pill River baptism, Jiang Hao would likely not allow a new disciple, who had been in Wild Hall for less than a month, to become a direct senior disciple so easily. In the other three directions, Pang Tong, Fang Yun, and Song Zhou, the three other direct disciples remained silent, but there was a trace of doubt in their eyes. They had worked incredibly hard to become direct disciples, yet here was Lin Dong, a mere newcomer. Although Lin Dong had achieved a remarkable feat earlier, it clearly wasn't enough to win their approval so quickly. Mo Ling and the others frowned, worried as they looked at Lin Dong. They were on good terms with him and were naturally happy to see Lin Dong's rise in status within Wild Hall. However, Jiang Hao's intervention cast a shadow over the situation, leaving them feeling helpless. After all, Jiang Hao was far more famous than Lin Dong within Wild Hall. Yet, as Mo Ling and his group watched, Lin Dong remained calm, his head slightly lowered without a trace of anger on his face. This composure earned him a bit of admiration from the group. From the moment they had met him, it seemed Lin Dong could always face tricky situations with quiet calmness and eventually resolve them. In midair, Qinzhan and Wu Dao glanced at Jiang Hao, frowning slightly but not appearing surprised at all. It was evident that they had anticipated this reaction. "Jiang Hao, what do you have to say?" Qinzhan asked slowly. Uncle Qinzhan, a direct senior disciple is supposed to be a role model for all the disciples. It's not just about having strength, but also having the qualifications to earn the respect of others. While this junior brother does have some talent, isn't promoting him to direct senior disciple a bit too hasty? Jiang Hao cupped his hands toward Qinzhan and spoke in a low, respectful tone. Ordinary disciples would address Qinzhan and Wu Dao as Hall Master, but as a direct senior disciple, Jiang Hao had the privilege of calling them uncle, a sign of the high status he held. Qinzhan furrowed his brow. "Jiang Hao, there are exceptions to every rule. If we stick rigidly to the rules, Wild Hall will forever remain the weakest of the four halls. Exceptions are necessary." Jiang Hao's eyes narrowed as he glanced at Lin Dong's back, his tone light as he continued, "I just don't think this junior brother is qualified for such an exception." His words caused a murmur of discontent to ripple through the platform. Jiang Hao's words were indeed harsh. Mo Ling and the others felt a flash of anger at Jiang Hao's remarks. They had come to see Lin Dong as the leader of their faction, and being looked down upon like this naturally made them uncomfortable. However, despite their anger, they dared not speak out recklessly. This was the Dao sect, and Jiang Hao's status and strength far exceeded their own. Their eyes turned to Lin Dong, waiting to see his reaction. To their surprise, Lin Dong remained calm, the corner of his mouth curling into a slight smile as he turned around. His gaze locked onto Jiang Hao's, showing no fear. Jiang Hao, seeing Lin Dong's gaze, merely smirked. He crossed his arms, radiating an oppressive aura as his powerful energy pressed toward Lin Dong. His seventh Nirvana stage strength allowed him to look down on Lin Dong with confidence. "Senior brother Jiang, what kind of qualifications do you think are necessary?" Lin Dong asked, his voice calm. "Respect from others and strength," Jiang Hao replied coolly. Lin Dong smiled. "I admit, as a newcomer to Wild Hall, I may not be familiar to many of the senior brothers. So in terms of respect, I don't have much of an advantage. But I can tell all of you here that in the next hall competition, Wild Hall will no longer be in last place." His soft yet confident words left many disciples stunned. That was a bold statement. Wild Hall had long been the weakest among the Dao sect's four halls. Surpassing the others was no simple task. "And what gives you the courage to make such a claim?" Jiang Hao asked coldly. "I lasted 11 days at the bottom of the Pill River," Lin Dong replied with a faint smile. Jiang Hao froze for a moment, then sneered, flicking his sleeve dismissively. "That means nothing. You're only at the 5th Nirvana stage. Where does your confidence come from?" If junior brother Lin can truly help Wild Hall avoid last place in the Hall competition, we won't have any objections to his promotion. One of the more well-known direct disciples in Wild Hall said after a moment of contemplation. Exactly. If you can achieve that, we have no problem with the exception. Following the first disciple's statement, a few other direct disciples also voiced their agreement. Although Jiang Hao was being difficult, they knew what Lin Dong's performance at the bottom of the Pill River represented. If Lin Dong could elevate Wild Hall's status, it would be a point of pride for everyone. After all, 4 years, Wild Hall had been the laughingstock of the other 3 halls after each competition, and that humiliation wasn't something anyone enjoyed. Humph! Seeing the shift in sentiment, Jiang Hao's face darkened with anger. He snapped, "You're all too naive. Do you really think a newly arrived disciple, no matter how talented, can compete with the top disciples of the other 3 halls who've been studying the 3 great scriptures? And if he can't, can you, senior brother Jiang?" A voice retorted from the platform. Jiang Hao's expression grew more sour. The 3 great scriptures were indeed powerful. If it were easy to compete with them, Wild Hall wouldn't have been in such a sorry state for so long. Senior brother Jiang, would you say the level of respect I've earned so far is sufficient? Lin Dong asked, his gaze still fixed on Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao took a deep breath, his eyes flickering with fury. You've got quite the tongue, but I doubt it's enough to win over all the disciples. I understand. Lin Dong nodded, then took a step forward, extending his right hand toward Jiang Hao with a slight tilt. His calm voice echoed across the platform, "Senior brother Jiang, please enlighten me." Lin Dong knew that no matter what, Jiang Hao wasn't going to let this go. And there was only one way to resolve it, by fighting. Interesting. From the other 3 directions, Pang Tong, Fang Yun, and Song Zhou narrowed their eyes at the unfolding scene, all smirking to themselves. Did Lin Dong really think Jiang Hao was another Tong Chuan? Even though they had witnessed Lin Dong pass the 5th Nirvana tribulation earlier, the gap between him and Jiang Hao was still immense. Jiang Hao's combat prowess was far beyond that of an ordinary 7th Nirvana stage expert. Low murmurs spread through the crowd. Many disciples frowned, knowing full well how strong Jiang Hao was. While Lin Dong had shown incredible potential, Jiang Hao was no Tong Chuan. He was one of Wild Hall's 4 direct senior disciples. Truly, the ignorance of youth? Someone muttered. Jiang Hao's lips curled into a smile, one that could be seen as either mocking or admiring. He glanced up at Chun Jun and Wu Dao. "Uncle, I assume I'm allowed to accept this challenge? Don't worry, I know my limits. I'm well aware of junior brother Lin's talent, and I won't hurt him badly. But he does need to learn the rules of Wild Hall. Someday, he'll understand that I only had his best interests as his senior in mind." Upon hearing this, Chun Jun and Wu Dao furrowed their brows, a hint of hesitation flashing in their eyes. Lin Dong's direct challenge to Jiang Hao had caught them off guard. They had expected Lin Dong to be more restrained, considering Jiang Hao's status as one of the 4 direct disciples. As Hall Masters of Wild Hall, they were well aware of Jiang Hao's many accomplishments and knew he wasn't an opponent to be taken lightly. Since Lin Dong has taken the initiative to challenge you, you naturally have the right to accept. However, not today. In 5 days, it will be time for the monthly competition, and then you 2 can fight freely, Qinjin said after some thought, his voice deep and decisive. He understood that for Lin Dong to be promoted to a direct senior disciple, overcoming the obstacle of Jiang Hao was inevitable. And Lin Dong, since you're new to Wild Hall and have not yet studied our martial arts, after today, you may go to the Wild Hall Martial Arts Hall. There, you can observe and practice any martial arts you choose. Lin Dong was slightly taken aback, realizing that Chen Jun didn't fully believe in his chances against Jiang Hao and had granted him 5 days to familiarize himself with Wild Hall's martial arts. Haha, since Uncle Chen Jun has spoken, let it be so, Jiang Hao said with a faint smile, clearly understanding Chen Jun's intentions. He glanced at Lin Dong, a mocking smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Junior brother Lin, make the most of these 5 days. I have nothing against you personally, but if you had been here for a year or even 6 months, I wouldn't have said a word. But as things stand now, he trailed off, shaking his head, leaving his meaning clear. He didn't believe Lin Dong was qualified to become a direct senior disciple at this moment. Lin Dong smiled without a trace of fear, his tone equally sharp and unyielding. "Thank you for the reminder, Senior Brother Jiang. I look forward to seeing you in 5 days." The commotion caused by Lin Dong's success in the Pill River baptism gradually subsided after his appearance, and the disciples around the river, filled with various emotions, began to leave. They knew well that from this day forward, all the disciples of Dao sect would know the name of Lin Dong, a remarkable new disciple of Wild Hall. To last 11 days at the bottom of the Pill River, this nearly unbelievable achievement outshone the accomplishments of all the young talents of this generation. And just as the excitement was dying down, another piece of news spread, leaving many shocked. Lin Dong had issued a challenge to Jiang Hao, one of the 4 direct senior disciples of Wild Hall. When this news broke, many disciples couldn't help but gape in surprise. While they understood that Lin Dong had no choice but to challenge Jiang Hao, they still couldn't help but marvel at his daring. In the Dao sect, there was no shortage of geniuses, but it was exceedingly rare for a newcomer who had been in the sect for less than a month to challenge a direct senior disciple. Everyone knew the vast gap that lay between them. The strength of Jiang Hao, at the 7th Nirvana stage, was well known across all 4 halls. He was an outstanding figure, even among the disciples of the Dao sect. And although Lin Dong had successfully passed the Nirvana tribulation, he was only at the 5th Nirvana stage. Despite knowing the difference in their strengths, no one mocked Lin Dong for overestimating himself. His previous achievements had already earned him the respect of all the disciples. No one could say for sure whether this disciple, who had already created a miracle, would be able to continue performing such feats. 5 days from now will be interesting, many disciples thought as they exchanged glances, a wave of anticipation rising within them. They were all curious to see if Lin Dong could perform another miracle when facing a seasoned direct senior disciple like Jiang Hao. Moreover, everyone knew that if Lin Dong managed to hold his ground in the battle with Jiang Hao, he would become the fastest disciple in the history of Dao sect to be promoted to direct senior disciple. With that thought, their hearts filled with envy, and their expectations for the duel in 5 days grew even stronger. The next day, Creek. Lin Dong pushed open the door and stepped outside. Sunlight poured down from the sky, warming his body in a way that felt especially comforting. He narrowed his eyes slightly, then opened them to take in the sight of the mist-shrouded mountains. A faint smile curved his lips. This place is really something. As a direct disciple, Lin Dong's residence was more secluded and peaceful than Mo Ling's and the others. According to the rules of Wild Hall, at this time of day, all disciples, except for the direct ones, were required to gather at the Pill River platform for their daily training. As a result, the mountain peak where Lin Dong lived was particularly quiet. Rested up? As Lin Dong enjoyed this rare moment of tranquility, a familiar voice suddenly sounded. He turned to see Wu Dao standing not far away, smiling at him. Lin Dong smiled and bowed respectfully to Wu Dao. "You little rascal, you really surprised me this time. 11 days, that's even better than senior brother Zhou Tong back then." Wu Dao walked over slowly, his gaze lingering on Lin Dong's youthful face as he sighed with a touch of complexity in his voice. "Zhou Tong." Lin Dong blinked. He now knew that this senior brother Zhou Tong was the one who had successfully comprehended the great wilderness scripture and later single-handedly stormed the Yuan sect, slaying 3 of their elders, a legendary figure. But don't get too cocky. I know you have your secrets, and you must have used some tricks at the bottom of the Pill River. Senior brother Zhou Tong, on the other hand, endured entirely on his own strength, Wu Dao said, his tone serious. "Sometimes, having more tricks is also a kind of strength," Lin Dong replied with a shrug. He had always been a practical person. Whatever worked, he would use. This world didn't offer fairness to anyone. Besides, the methods he had weren't something that had come easily. He had paid a steep price and worked hard to acquire them. Of course, despite saying that, Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for Elder Zhou Tong. He truly was a formidable figure, daring to storm the Yuan sect all by himself. "You sly rascal." Wu Dao chuckled, but didn't argue with Lin Dong's statement. After a moment of contemplation, he added, Your challenge to Jiang Hao is a bit reckless. His strength is not something Tong Chuan can compare to. I want to comprehend the great wilderness scripture, and there's no avoiding my senior brothers in the process, Lin Dong replied with a slightly helpless smile. With your talent, if you spent just 6 months in Wild Hall honing your skills, no one would oppose your promotion to direct senior disciple. Wu Dao shook his head and continued, but it's too late for that now. You're not a rash person. So since you've made this challenge, I assume you have some degree of confidence. Come, let me take you to the Wild Hall Martial Arts Hall. As a disciple of Wild Hall, you must familiarize yourself with its martial arts. Without further delay, Wu Dao moved forward into the air, and Lin Dong swiftly followed. Wild Hall was vast, with dozens of towering peaks piercing the clouds, shrouded in mist like a celestial paradise. From some of the peaks, the sounds of martial training echoed faintly, and the energy of powerful practitioners filled the air. Under Wu Dao's guidance, after about 10 minutes of flying, the two descended near the center of Wild Hall, landing atop a giant peak. There, they saw an enormous and ancient stone tower. The stone tower stood surrounded by slabs of blue stone, with a path made of piled stones leading to various parts of the mountain. Many Wild Hall disciples were coming and going, and when they saw Wu Dao and Lin Dong, they immediately bowed in greeting. Numerous curious eyes turned toward Lin Dong. He was now quite the famous figure in Wild Hall. Wu Dao nodded slightly in acknowledgement of the disciples before leading Lin Dong straight to the ancient tower. As they approached, Lin Dong finally realized just how grand and imposing the stone tower was. Though time had left weathered marks on its surface, these signs of age only added to the sense of deep history and heritage. This sense of antiquity was a testament to the legacy and foundation of the sect. Lin Dong gazed at the stone tower, a flicker of excitement in his eyes. He was eager to explore the martial arts of such a prestigious sect. Shifting his gaze from the tower, Lin Dong's attention turned to the stone entrance, where he noticed an elderly man in a gray robe sweeping away fallen leaves with a broom. The old man's face was deeply wrinkled, and his eyes were a cloudy white, devoid of pupils. He was clearly blind. Yet, as Lin Dong watched this blind man, a strange sensation stirred within his Niwen palace, where his spiritual energy was stored. This phenomenon was something Lin Dong had never experienced before. What surprised Lin Dong even more was that he couldn't sense any trace of primordial energy from this elderly man. Wu Dao noticed Lin Dong's gaze, but didn't offer any explanation. He approached the old man and bowed slightly. However, the old man showed no reaction and simply continued sweeping the leaves with focused attention. I'll leave you here. The martial arts hall is vast, and the martial arts within are abundant. What you choose will depend on your own fate. I can't offer you much advice, Wu Dao said, turning to Lin Dong. But remember, no matter what martial arts you decide to train in, do not abandon the essence of Wild Hall, Wu Dao added with his hands behind his back. Lin Dong was briefly taken aback. After a moment of reflection, he softly muttered, Wild Force? He had sensed that special power during his fight with Tong Chuan. If it weren't for his devouring ancestral talisman, he would have suffered greatly under that force. Wu Dao seemed pleased with Lin Dong's response, nodding slightly. In the martial arts hall, there's a wild stone. Every disciple of Wild Hall obtains their wild force from it. This power will make your martial arts even stronger. Understood, Lin Dong replied, intrigued by the so-called wild force. Go on in, Wu Dao said with a wave of his hand. Lin Dong bowed to Wu Dao, then stepped forward. As he passed by the blind elder, he hesitated for a moment and gave a respectful bow before entering the stone tower. Wu Dao watched Lin Dong's figure disappear into the tower, exhaling softly. His gaze shifted to the blind elder as he spoke quietly. He's the one who performed better than senior brother Zhou Tong in the Pill River baptism. For the first time, the broom in the blind elder's hand paused for a moment. Back then, senior brother Zhou Tong sat in front of the wild stone for just 3 days before he obtained the wild force. I wonder how Lin Dong will fare this time. He might be the most promising disciple Wild Hall has had in 100 years to comprehend the great wilderness scripture. If you're interested, senior brother, you might want to keep an eye on him, Wu Dao said in a low voice, glancing at the blind elder. The elder remained silent for a while, then slowly put away his broom and, with measured steps, walked into the stone tower. Wu Dao, seeing this, sighed in relief. It seemed that the elder had taken an interest in Lin Dong. Young one, obtaining the wild force is the first step in comprehending the great wilderness scripture. If you can't pass this step, I'm afraid the scripture will remain out of your reach. Wu Dao murmured softly to himself as he gazed toward the interior of the tower.